The desert doesn't forget. It just waits. 7 years ago, a mother and daughter vanished without a trace in the heart of the Nevada wilderness. No witnesses, no evidence, just silence, and one man's alibi that never quite fit. Now, the woman who refused to give up is back, and what she uncovers shakes the entire town to its core. This is the story of Naomi Rivers and the secrets Whispering Dunes try to bury. If you're drawn to true crime mysteries, real-life survival stories, and emotional journeys of justice, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts as the story unfolds, and subscribe for more deeply narrated cases just like this one. Your support helps bring stories like Naomi's to life. Now, let's go back to the beginning, to the moment the desert swallowed a family whole. The desert has a way of swallowing sound. Even in the daytime, it holds its breath, as if nature itself is waiting for a secret to surface. Naomi Rivers stood on the cracked earth of the Whispering Dunes retreat, her boots sinking slightly into the shifting sand. The last time she was here, the sky had been a soft, endless blue, filled with hope. Now it loomed above her like an accusation. The sun was merciless, and so was memory. 7 years had passed, but the scent of juniper and sun-baked stone still clung to the air, unchanged. Naomi's breath caught as she stepped past the iron archway marking the retreat's entrance. It had once welcomed spiritual seekers, yoga moms, and burnout tech execs with promises of clarity through nature. Now, for her, it was a crime scene wrapped in spiritual pretensions. She remembered the day vividly. Celeste had been excited, glowing even, as she spoke about mindfulness, healing crystals, and how little Ilara needed to unplug. Ilara had rolled her eyes, the way only an 11-year-old can, but she'd gone because she trusted her mother, because Naomi had said it'd be fine. It wasn't. The retreat had offered 3-day packages, digital detox, grounding hikes, shared meals, and silence after sundown. When Naomi last heard from them, it was a text from Celeste. No signal, but we're good. Ilara's grumpy, but loving the stars. We'll call when we're out. That call never came. Naomi had waited a day, then 2. When she called the Whispering Dunes reception desk on the 3rd day, they told her the family had already checked out. A simple misunderstanding, they claimed. But when Naomi drove up that very night, desperate and uninvited, she found their cabin still made up, their bags still inside. No sign of departure. No log of checkout. The police came within hours. Drones were dispatched. Search dogs combed the area. Nothing. Not a footprint. Not a drop water bottle. Just heat, silence, and speculation. And Toby West, the man who had founded Whispering Dunes, with his perfectly cropped beard, wind-chapped skin, and eyes that seemed to pierce through people like X-rays. Toby had been a darling of survivalist wellness circles. Charismatic. Articulate. A former park ranger turned spiritual guru. He gave interviews with composed grief and a wrinkle between his brows that suggested sorrow. He claimed he was away on a training hike the weekend Celeste and Ilara vanished. But Naomi remembered how he touched Ilara's shoulder at orientation, how his hand had lingered just a moment too long. Still, the evidence was non-existent. Eventually, even the search team stopped showing up. The desert doesn't give back what it takes, one ranger had told her with a pat on the shoulder. Naomi never forgot it. She tried to move on. For 7 years she pretended to live. But grief doesn't vanish. It congeals. Naomi closed her art gallery 6 months after the disappearance. She'd stopped painting, stopped eating with others, stopped returning calls. It wasn't just sadness, it was guilt, because she'd promised Celeste she'd look after them both. And now they were gone, and she was still here. But now there was a hat and a bracelet. It was 4:38 a.m. when Naomi's phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, and her first instinct was to let it go to voicemail. She had long ago grown numb to late-night calls, the kind that once signaled hope but too often brought condolences or strange people claiming they'd seen something. The desert did things to people. Hallucinations, fantasies, ghost stories paraded as tips. But something about this call felt different. The way her chest tightened before she even answered. Her fingers trembled as she swiped the screen. "Naomi Rivers?" the voice asked. Mayo.com measured. "Yes. This is Ranger Daniel Kohler, Bureau of Land Management. I'm stationed out near Dead Echo Canyon, about 80 miles from the Whispering Dunes Retreat. Are you the emergency contact for a missing person, Elara Rivers?" Naomi sat up straight, as if her entire body had heard Elara's name. "I am," she said slowly. "Why are you calling me now?" "There was a hiker early this morning, Sunrise Trekker. He found something in a dry ravine, wedged between two rock shelves. It's old, sun-bleached, but it's a child's canvas sun hat. Inside was a bracelet, thin, silver, partially buried, engraved with initials." "What initials?" "ER." The silence that followed cracked like a lightning bolt through Naomi's mind. She gripped the edge of her blanket, suddenly breathless. "That's hers," she whispered. "That's Elara's bracelet. I had it made for her birthday the year before. I thought you should know. The bracelet's been taken into evidence for analysis. But there's more," Ranger Kohler continued. "One of our trail cameras captured blurred movement about 6 weeks ago, not far from where this was found. Desert animals, most likely, but the footage includes a small figure, human-shaped, looked like a teenage girl, about 5'3". Naomi's mind spiraled. The canyon was vast. Wildlife distorted footage all the time. But 5'3"? That would be about right. Elara would be almost 18 now. Could be nothing, Kohler added. Could be everything. But the fact that it's in the same region where she vanished, we thought it was worth notifying you. "Send me the coordinates," Naomi said, already throwing off her covers. "I'm coming there. Today." Whispering Dunes hadn't changed much on the outside. The same clay-colored cabins dotted the perimeter like quiet sentinels. The main lodge still bore the stylized compass and lotus logo above its doorframe. But inside, the people were new. The air felt different, more like a business now, less like a cult wrapped in spirituality. Naomi didn't introduce herself as she checked in under a false name. She wanted time. She wanted space. And most of all, she wanted the truth. She watched people during their communal dinner in the lodge dining room. Hikers, influencers, off-grid couples. The same types as before. No one remembered her. She moved like a ghost. In the hallway near the staff offices, there was a corkboard of retreat memories. Photos, handwritten testimonials, old flyers. Her breath caught when she saw it. A framed photo dated the exact weekend Celeste and Elara disappeared. A group shot on the trail. Right in the center stood Toby West, in a slate-gray Henley and wide-brim hat, arm casually slung around another guide's shoulder. She took a picture of the photo. Toby had told police he was leading a group expedition in Utah that weekend. That was on record. But this photo said otherwise. He had been here. Still, even with the timeline cracking, she needed more. Naomi started retracing steps. She visited dusty pawn shops along the highway, asking about old hiking gear, engraved jewelry, anything with initials. She stopped by medical clinics near the reservation lines, slipping flyers under desks, asking about teenage girls without ID, girls with desert infections or unexplained injuries. She combed social media for tag photos near Dead Echo Canyon. She watched hours of Toby's archived live streams, survival workshops, and press interviews, logging every time his story subtly changed. Piece by piece, she was building something. Not a clear image, not yet, but a shape in the sand. Something buried. Naomi parked her rental SUV along a cracked service road that hadn't seen maintenance in a decade. Dead Echo Canyon yawned ahead of her, an open mouth in the earth with jagged teeth of sandstone. The wind whistled low, almost melodic, almost human. She tightened the scarf around her neck and stepped out. The ranger had been clear. Followed the narrow wash down toward the west ridge, then left at the split boulders. That's where they found the bracelet. That's where the camera had been set up. That's where the ghost had walked. She moved carefully. The desert played tricks, on depth, on distance, on time. A shadow could look like a figure. A footprint could vanish with a breeze. But Naomi had learned how to look closer, how to feel her way forward. At the foot of the ridge, she saw it. A thin trail of impressions leading to the dry ravine. Faint, uneven, but unmistakably human. The ranger had flagged the spot with a bright orange ribbon that fluttered in the wind. Naomi dropped to her knees beside the place where the bracelet had been found. The soil was loose, disturbed, not by recent traffic, but old movement. She ran her fingers across the gritty surface and closed her eyes. She imagined Alara here, 11 years old, kneeling to pick up something shiny, maybe crying, maybe calling for her mother, or maybe just walking. 2 days to understand she'd been left behind, or worse, taken. She opened her eyes and scanned the ravine. Her attention snagged on a curious structure tucked behind a curve in the rock, a sun-faded metal box bolted to the canyon wall. The trail cam. Naomi walked to it. The lens was cracked, the housing partially rusted, but it had power. A blinking green LED lit up as she stepped in front of it. Movement detected. The system was active, which meant recordings were recent. Back at the ranger station, she'd get the footage. She'd request every file from the past 3 months, maybe 6. She didn't care how long it took, because she was starting to believe Alara hadn't vanished into nothingness. She'd simply been disappeared. The lodge was quieter in the late evening. Desert travelers had retired to their cabins. Naomi wandered into the lounge, pretending to browse the tea shelf and fire circle notices. And then she saw him, Toby West, a bit older now, his hair grayer, body a little leaner, but the same walk, confident, fluid, like a man who knew he could read people faster than they could read him. He was standing at the staff board, flipping through clipboards, speaking with a young girl, 16, maybe 17, with a round face and sunburned nose. She laughed at something he said, a little too quickly. Naomi's blood cooled. She didn't confront him. Not yet, but she stayed long enough to hear him say her name. Not Naomi's. Mia, the girl. Naomi watched as he touched the girl's shoulder. Light, casual, but again, lingering just a second too long. Mia didn't seem to notice, but Naomi did. The next day, she made her move. She approached an older man cleaning the back tool shed, weathered, limping slightly, wearing a Whispering Dunes logo cap from years ago. Probably a lifer, probably someone who'd seen things. Naomi played it gentle. You ever work here back when Toby ran the whole show? The man looked up, squinting. Yeah, been here through it all. Before the investors. Before it got cute. Why? Naomi hesitated, then said, I heard a rumor about an old underground shelter. Emergency use only. Supposedly sealed off. The man froze. Then, with a sideways glance, muttered, No one goes down there. But I found something once. Years back. What? Walkie-talkies. Kids' boots. Tucked behind a false wall in that shelter. I reported it. They told me to shut it. Said it was leftover supply junk. But his voice lowered. Didn't feel right. Naomi held his gaze. Can you show me where it is? He nodded slowly. Midnight. Maintenance hatch behind cabin 12. Don't let anyone see you. The desert was a world of silence by midnight. Only the wind moved, whistling softly between the slats of the cabins, and rustling the dry sagebrush like breath over bone. Naomi stood in the shadows behind cabin 12, the red moon low and swollen over the hills. The maintenance man, his name was Garrison, arrived late, his flashlight flickering like a warning. 2 minutes, he said under his breath. If anyone catches you, I don't know you. Naomi gave a curt nod. He pried open a rusted grate tucked behind a pile of stacked lumber and led her down a narrow concrete stairwell, barely wide enough for one person. The air turned cold and damp as they descended, like they were moving into the earth's forgotten lungs. At the bottom, a heavy metal door. Garrison unlocked it with an old skeleton key. Inside, it smelled like old copper and mildew, and something else Naomi couldn't place at first, a sourness, like rot and dust and silence too heavy to name. She stepped into the dark. Her flashlight beam swept across steel shelving and emergency water packs, a dusty solar lantern, canned beans with faded labels, all typical for survival shelter. But then she saw them. A child's sleeping bag, torn at the seam, scribbled notebook stacked inside a plastic crate, crayon drawings curled at the corners. One showed a girl in a wide desert hat standing beneath the sun, stick arms reaching up. Naomi's breath caught. She opened the top notebook. Inside, uneven handwriting spiraled across the pages. Don't think of the before. The before isn't real anymore. You're not her. You're new. This place is safe. You are safe. If you remember, it hurts. So, don't remember. Each phrase was repeated dozens of times. Naomi flipped to the last page. There, scrawled and scratched into the paper until it nearly tore. I miss my name. She pressed her fingers to her lips, blinking hard. Then she spotted something half buried under a tarp. A digital voice recorder. Old, dust-covered, but intact. She didn't touch it yet. Instead, she took a photo of everything. The boots, the books, the bag, the walls. She would document every inch, every hidden truth buried down here. When she finally turned back toward the recorder, she noticed the initials carved into the casing. Yar, Naomi Rivers. The truth had never left the desert. It had just been forced underground. The desert didn't forget. Its silence wasn't peace. It was pause, waiting, watching. Naomi felt that truth settle in her chest as she parked at the front gate of the newly refurbished, whispering Dunes Renewal Retreat. Same name, new branding. The signage was polished cedar now, with a tagline carved beneath. Reclaim yourself. She stared at it for a long time. It had been 7 years since the weekend that changed her life. 7 years since her sister Celeste and her niece Alara vanished without a trace. And now, suddenly, signs emerged in the sand. An old bracelet, blurred figures in camera footage, and a girl who looked like the past wearing a new face. The receptionist didn't recognize her, of course. Naomi had changed, shorter hair now, streaked with silver, her figure leaner, more wiry. But it was the way she moved that had shifted most, like someone who had learned not to trust the ground beneath her feet. "I'm here for the mindfulness weekend," Naomi said with practiced calm. Signed up under Darlene Quinn. The receptionist, a soft-voiced young man with a yoga mat strapped to his back, typed her name into the system. "Yep, got you here. Cabin 7. Group session starts in 30 minutes in the fire circle." Naomi took her key card and nodded. "Thanks." She made her way to Cabin 7, but didn't unpack. She wasn't here to find herself. She was here to find the truth. After the sun dipped behind the ridgeline, she walked the retreat grounds like a ghost retracing its final steps. Some cabins had been rebuilt, others renamed, but the land remembered. The trees she once passed while holding Alara's hand still stood. The stone meditation bench where Celeste once tied her scarf fluttered with prayer flags now, but the memory remained. That night, at the group bonfire, she saw a familiar silhouette, Toby West. He wasn't introduced formally, but he didn't need to be. Naomi recognized the slow way he entered the firelight, all presence and charisma, like a man casting a net. "Nature," he said, voice low and rhythmic, "is not just around us, it's within us. And when we lose our way, the desert can show us the map back." Some of the newcomers nodded, entranced. Naomi watched his eyes move around the circle, calculated, observant, and then they landed on her. Something flickered. Recognition? She kept her face neutral. Let him wonder. After the session ended, Naomi slipped away and made her way toward the old staff kitchen. She remembered the layout. A side hallway, then a wall of old group photos. She found what she was looking for, an image dated 2 days before Celeste and Alara vanished. The photo was grainy but unmistakable. Toby West, in hiking gear. On site, he had told investigators he was off premises that entire weekend. Naomi snapped a picture of the photo with her phone. Proof. Not enough to convict, but enough to start pulling on the threads. And she was just getting started. The next morning, Naomi drove into the closest desert town, Clay Hollow, population maybe 300 if the wind blew right. She checked the pawn shop first. Nothing. Then the urgent care clinic. No record under Naomi Rivers or Celeste Rivers in the last decade. But the nurse did remember a girl, maybe 15, who came in once, no ID, covered in scrapes. Said her name was Elle. Disappeared before they could follow up. Naomi left her number. Then she walked into an old consignment shop near the edge of town, where the bells above the door jingled like a funeral chime. Behind the counter was a woman in her 60s with dyed red hair, and readers perched halfway down her nose. She looked up slowly. "You're not from around here," the woman said. Naomi didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a copy of the journal page she'd photographed in the shelter, the one that read, "I miss my name." The woman's eyes narrowed. "You seen that before?" Naomi asked softly. The woman didn't speak, but she walked into the back room and returned with a single item, a bracelet, sun-worn, dull silver, engraved on the underside. "Yar." Naomi reached for it, but the woman stopped her hand. "She was here," the woman said, "years ago. Quiet. Looked lost. Wouldn't let me call anyone. Bought a second-hand jacket and asked if I had any journals. Did she say where she was staying?" The woman nodded toward the canyon. "Didn't say it. but her eyes did. Naomi left the shop with her heart pounding. It was happening. The fog was lifting. And beneath it, a trail was forming, twisted, half buried, but real. And at the center of it all stood Toby West. He hadn't vanished. He had planted himself deeper. And Naomi was going to dig him out. Naomi began attending every group session Toby West led. He no longer held formal titles at the retreat, but his presence lingered like smoke. Part mentor, part mystic, all manipulation. He wasn't the type to command a room with force. He didn't need to. His power lay in softness. Too soft, Naomi thought. The kind of softness that coiled. On the third evening, Naomi noticed a girl. 15, maybe 16. Long dark braids, knotted loosely over her shoulder. She didn't smile like the others. Instead, she sat slightly back, eyes half-lidded, hands clasped in her lap, like someone trained to be still, like a student who didn't speak unless spoken to. Her name, Naomi learned later, was Mia. During a nature walk at sunrise, a session Toby led with only 4 participants. Naomi trailed behind and watched closely. Toby slowed to walk beside Mia. "You feel the energy here?" he asked, brushing his hand lightly against her back. "It's been waiting for you." Mia gave the faintest nod. Naomi's stomach twisted. He used the same tone, the same cadence. She remembered from the old videos, those few archive clips from Whispering Dunes promotional campaigns. The ones where Alara, age 11, stood silently next to her mother, eyes blank and unsure. After the hike, Naomi approached Mia, casually near the outdoor water spout. "You been coming here long?" Naomi asked, unscrewing the cap from her bottle. Mia glanced around, then shrugged. "A few months, off and on. Alone." "No, my mom. She thinks this place saved her." Naomi hesitated. "Do you?" Mia looked away. Her voice was almost a whisper. "I don't think places save people. I think people save people." Naomi saw it then, the fracture behind Mia's words. The same kind Alara had once spoken through, when she was very young and had just begun therapy after losing her father. This wasn't a girl on a mindfulness retreat. This was a girl being slowly erased. The maintenance logs were sparse. Most records have been digitized after the retreat's ownership change, and anything predating that was either lost or archived in a water-damaged storage unit 2 miles away. Naomi had other plans. She returned that night to the underground shelter, where she had found the journal. Garrison hadn't seen her since. She suspected he didn't want to, but she had memorized the path. She brought gloves this time, and a stronger flashlight. The recorder still sat beneath the tarp. She pocketed it and began inspecting the far corners of the shelter. Behind one stack of old shelves, she found what looked like a fuse box. She opened and froze. Not a fuse box. A crude wall safe, tucked behind a removable panel. Inside were 3 items: a worn leather pouch, a roll of duct tape, and a plastic bag containing a small blue inhaler, the kind Alara used to carry everywhere. Naomi clutched it in her palm and slid to the ground. She hadn't let herself cry in years. Not like this. Not since the night she saw Alara's face on the missing persons flyer, printed in cheap ink, fluttering against a telephone pole outside her old gallery. When she finally rose, her face was calm again, focused. She examined the leather pouch. Inside was a list of names, roughly 15, each written by hand. Some had check marks next to them. Some didn't. Mia, second phase, not ready. Alara, prime subject, progressing. Marla, deployed, regressive. Theo, removed. Harper, Unknown. Naomi's throat tightened. This wasn't a survival retreat. It was a conditioning farm. And Toby West had been selecting his subjects. Naomi wasn't impulsive by nature. Years of curating fragile art pieces and caring for a grieving child had taught her restraint, patience. But now, every breath she took felt like walking a tightrope stretched over fire. She needed to confront Toby, but not carelessly. If Valera was still alive, if Mia was being groomed the same way, then she couldn't afford to scare him off. She needed answers. She needed him cornered. So she set the trap. That morning, Naomi visited the retreat's administrative office under the guise of making a donation. She asked about sponsoring a new mindfulness program for at-risk youth, hinting that she worked with a small charitable fund in Los Angeles. It was the kind of pitch people like Toby couldn't resist. A well-connected, soft-spoken woman offering money and validation? He bit. They arranged a meeting, just the two of them, at the East Fire Circle the following morning. Naomi claimed it was private protocol before making significant investments. Toby agreed with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. That night, Naomi prepared her materials. The audio recorder she had found in the underground shelter had been cleaned up by a friend in sound engineering. He owed her a favor. The final track was faint but unmistakable. Toby's voice, layered under desert wind and static. Let go of the old name. There's no Naomi, no Celeste, only your breath, only this place. Naomi had also scanned the journal page and the list of names from the leather pouch. She tucked them into a folder marked with a fake nonprofit logo. And then quietly, she made a call to the local authorities. Not the sheriff. He'd written her off years ago. Instead, she reached out to a female ranger who worked the federal side of Dead Echo Canyon. Someone who actually listened. Come alone, Naomi said, and bring backup. But keep them out of sight. The desert light was gold and cruel that morning. Toby sat by the stone pit, sipping something herbal from a tin cup. He looked up as Naomi approached, wearing the same beige woven shirt from their early promotional videos. He smiled that disarming smile again. You came, he said. I had a feeling. Naomi set her folder down between them. I wanted to hear your vision for the new program. He nodded. We're focusing on identity integration now, giving kids a clean slate. So many come from noise, broken homes, digital addictions, trauma. We offer silence. Reset. Is that what Alara got? Naomi asked evenly. Toby blinked. Once. I don't know anyone by that name. She slid the journal across the stone table, opened it to a page smeared with sand and ink. I miss my name. Then the recorder. She pressed play. His voice filled the space, barely above a whisper, like a ghost being summoned. Toby didn't move for 10 seconds. Then he smiled again, tighter this time. Where did you find this? Where you left her, Naomi said. He leaned in slightly. You shouldn't have come back here. Naomi didn't flinch. Neither should you. The tension crackled between them. Toby's hand twitched toward his bag, maybe a knife, maybe something worse. But Naomi was ready. This entire conversation, she said, tapping the side of her shirt, has been recorded, and the ranger station has eyes on us. You move, they move. Toby froze. For the first time, Naomi saw the predator falter, and then he lunged. A flash of dust, a swing of his arm. The folder scattered. Naomi dropped backward just as two figures emerged from behind the ridge. Rangers, weapons drawn. On the ground, one shouted. Toby hesitated, rage boiling beneath the surface. But he obeyed. Naomi watched as they cuffed him, face down in the dirt. He kept muttering one phrase over and over again. She chose this. She chose this. She chose this. Naomi stood, brushing sand off her palms. She looked down at him. "No, Toby, you taught her to choose you. And now I'm here to remind her who she really is." Toby West said nothing during questioning. Not at the retreat, not in the holding center in Ely, and certainly not when presented with the journals, the names, or the audio evidence. He asked for a lawyer and stared at the wall, but the journal led them somewhere he couldn't bury. Inside the back cover, scribbled in a trembling hand, were GPS coordinates, a secluded patch of land just south of the Whispering Dunes retreat, owned under a shell LLC traced to a dead address in New Mexico. But the real clue came from a ranger Naomi had called, Officer Jordan, who recognized the location from drone footage. "It's a cabin," she said, "built into a cliffside. No roads, just a dry riverbed that cuts behind a mesa." The warrant came quickly, and when they entered the property at dawn, sweeping with dogs, drones, and armed backup, they found the girl, thin, taller than they expected, brown hair grown past her shoulders, face partly obscured by a hooded sweatshirt. She stood barefoot in the doorway, blinking in the rising sun. "Are you Alara Rivers?" one of the officers asked. The girl didn't answer. She looked past them, at the dust trail left behind by the convoy, at the silence, at the world she'd been told was filled with betrayal and monsters. Then her eyes found Naomi, who had followed in a separate vehicle, against protocol. Alara's expression didn't soften. It hardened. She pointed at Naomi. "You left us," she said. The facility where they took Alara was more like a desert hospice than a psychiatric hospital. Quiet, remote, with cactus gardens and long open windows. Naomi wasn't allowed to see her the first 2 days. The doctors called it cognitive reconciliation delay. Alara had lived for 7 years under a rewritten truth. In that truth, her mother had died from heat stroke during a sacred walk in the desert. Naomi had been ashamed and refused to search for them. She had wanted a life free of responsibility. Toby had painted himself as a savior, the desert as a holy forge, and Alara as its chosen daughter. The process of undoing that took time and pain. When Naomi was finally granted visitation, she entered a small atrium where Alara sat sketching something on blank paper. "Hi," Naomi said softly. Alara didn't look up. "You shouldn't be here." "I know, but I am." "You left me?" Naomi sat across from her, setting down a small leather-bound book, a collection of photos, childhood birthdays, camping trips, Alara embraces, Naomi asleep on the couch with Alara curled up beside her. "Toby told me you wouldn't look for us," Alara said. Naomi nodded. "He told you a lot of things." Silence stretched. Then Alara touched one photo. A candid shot. Celeste with cake on her cheek, Alara laughing beside her. "I remember this," she whispered. "We sang the wrong birthday song on purpose. Mom said it made her feel younger." Naomi smiled gently, tears in her eyes. "You made her feel everything." They found the body 4 days later, buried near the remains of an abandoned observation post just west of the retreat, where Toby had once run late-night vision quests. The grave was shallow, disturbed by coyotes. The skull had a fracture, blunt force trauma. Dental records confirmed it was Celeste. Naomi stood at the edge of the burial site when they uncovered the final piece of her sister's story. Officer Jordan handed her the bag locket found with the body. Inside was a photo of Alara as a toddler and a folded note. "If anything happens to me, tell Alara she's worth everything." Everything. Naomi didn't cry. She stood silently as the desert wind curled around her, carrying the faint scent of sage and scorched earth. The same wind that had erased her sister, hidden her niece, and buried the truth in dust. But now it was speaking. Now, Naomi was listening. Naomi returned to the desert hospital every day for 2 weeks. She brought no more photos, No emotional speeches, just quiet presence. She read poetry out loud sometimes. Pablo Neruda, Mary Oliver. Once, she brought paints and asked Alara if she still liked watercolors. Alara shrugged. I don't know what I like. That was the hardest part, not the anger, but the hollowing, the absence of desire. The way Alara's voice seemed disconnected from her own ears, like she was reading lines in a language she hadn't spoken in years. Naomi watched her paint one day, just broad, endless strokes of burnt ochre and ash gray. Desert? Naomi asked. Alara nodded, but not outside. Inside. Naomi sat beside her and whispered, Let's start with names. Do you remember what you used to call me? A long silence. Then, know me. Naomi smiled. I've forgotten that. I didn't, Alara said. I just wasn't allowed to say it. The trial made national headlines. Toby West, once a celebrated wilderness guru and mindfulness leader, now stood accused of manslaughter, abduction, psychological manipulation, and operating an unlicensed youth program under false identity. But it wasn't Naomi who turned the tide. It was Alara. She sat in the witness box in a pressed black dress, her hair pulled back, her voice steady. The courtroom was silent as she described 7 years of slow erasure. He called it realignment. Every morning we woke up to mantras. Your past is poison. Your body is new. He said names were cages. That Naomi had put me in one, and he was breaking me out. When asked about her mother, Alara's voice broke only once. She tried to run. She begged him to stop. One night, I heard them arguing. The next morning, she was gone. He told me she chose to become one with the land. Naomi sat in the gallery, hands clenched in her lap. The prosecution played the audio Naomi had uncovered. They showed the journal, the walkie-talkies, the underground shelter. They painted the picture not of a guru, but of a man obsessed with control. And when Toby took the stand, he was calm, almost smug. They came to me broken, he said. All I did was give them silence. But the jury disagreed. Guilty on all major counts. Alara was placed into an intensive outpatient program, with Naomi listed as her legal guardian again. Trust in return overnight. Sometimes Alara lashed out, especially when memories flickered back with no warning. The sound of a kettle, the smell of pine, even Naomi's laugh on the wrong day could trigger it. But they made rituals. They took morning walks before the sun got too hot. Naomi cooked old recipes. Herbs Alara used to pick from the small garden back in San Francisco. They re-watched Pixar movies. At first, Alara sat stiff, arms crossed. But once, during Ratatouille, she laughed. Genuinely. Naomi almost wept. One evening, Alara came into Naomi's room with a question. Was my mom scared? Naomi sat up. I think she was brave. But yes, she was scared. For you. I don't remember what she smelled like, Alara whispered. Is that bad? Naomi shook her head. Smells fade. Love doesn't. Alara crawled onto the bed, curling into Naomi's arms. She hadn't done that in nearly a decade. I want to remember. Naomi kissed the top of her head. Then let's remember together. 3 months later, Naomi returned to Whispering Dunes. Alone. The retreat had been shut down indefinitely. A wire fence now surrounded the entrance. She walked the perimeter with Officer Jordan, who helped gather the last few boxes of evidence from the underground shelter. Inside one of them was a roll of canvas, water damaged but intact. A child's painting. Mountains. A stick figure girl. A dark-haired woman holding her hand, in crayon beneath it. Me and Mom. Safe now. Naomi held the image against her chest, eyes closed. The desert was still, and for the first time, it didn't feel cruel. It felt like closure. They didn't go back to San Francisco right away. Naomi leased a modest adobe-style house outside Bishop, California, far enough from the desert to feel safe, but close enough to let Alara heal on her own terms. The town was quiet. A bookstore, a family-run diner, and a river trail that shimmered under golden light in the evenings. Alara enrolled in an alternative learning program that focused on creativity and healing. No grades, no bells, just expression. She started sketching again, faces mostly, women with clouded eyes and long braided hair. Naomi asked once if they were real. Some of them, Alara said. Some I made up so I wouldn't be alone. Naomi understood. She was sketching again, too, landscapes this time. The cracked earth, shadows over Sierra ridges. Always watching, always waiting. Sometimes they painted beside each other in silence. And sometimes Alara would hum an old tune Naomi hadn't heard since she was a girl. That's when Naomi knew the real work had begun, not forgetting but integrating. In September, Naomi used part of the gallery sale money to donate a bench to the Bishop River Trail. It faced a curve in the stream where cottonwoods lined the banks, and it bore a plaque, in memory of Celeste Rivers. She gave everything to bring light into a dark world. They sat there together on Alara's 12th birthday, her first since coming home. Naomi brought the same lemon cake Celeste used to bake, slightly overdone, and a bouquet of dried desert marigolds. Why marigolds? Alara asked. They bloom in terrible soil, and they come back even after fire. Alara said nothing at first. Then she took a piece of cake, broke it gently in half, and whispered she liked this. Naomi reached for her hand and squeezed it. She'd be proud of you. Alara stared out at the river, her face thoughtful. I think I'm starting to remember her laugh. It sounded like wind chimes. Naomi blinked back tears. It did. Later that fall, Naomi received a package from the state investigator's office. Inside was the original journal they recovered from the underground shelter. Naomi hadn't wanted to keep it, but Alara asked if she could. I want to read who I was, she explained, so I can see how far I've come. They read through it slowly, over many weeks. Each page a breadcrumb from a maze. Some of it hurt. Some of it didn't even sound like Alara. But one page stood out. My name used to be Alara, but now